Hello, good evening. And hello, Martin.
Hi, Silvana.
Welcome to this final concluding fireside chat. And let me just briefly introduce myself and Martin before we then really kick things off. So I'm Silvana Koch-Mehrin, and indeed I used to be a member of the European Parliament for 10 years, from 2004 to 2014. And then I founded Women Political Leaders, which is the worldwide network of women in politics. Also, I'm a senior advisor to Binance, and I'm doing a few things as a venture partner with a Swiss-based venture capital company. And this is Martin, who is the star of the evening, and who is the executive vice president Europe at Binance. But he is also known as one of those personalities who's always there where there are exciting new frontiers. And this was when you were in politics in Slovakia, just at the time of huge transition. You worked for the World Economic Forum, United Nations, European Union, different ventures, different corporate ventures, and now at Binance. And you've always been with finance and innovation and research. So really, you are the man of the moment, if I can say it this way.
Thank you for that kind intro. And it's great to be here, everyone.
Yeah, probably better not to say anything anymore after this introduction.
Yeah,
right?
I can
Because
only
people will
make
be
it
just
worse.
wondering what this is. No. But no, it's not overpromising here. But today, I mean, I've been here and it was hugely interesting. A lot of information to digest, and sometimes it felt a bit like a feast of acronyms. I mean, I actually was first time in Brussels when the Directorate Generals had still numbers, not names. Then we moved to a phase where it was all much better understandable, and now we have EBA, NFT, DeFi, Mika. So we're back to kind of a different stage, but now we're here to discuss on a high level, visionary way, the state of the Web 3.0 union. And supposedly that union is global, but for the sake of this evening, we discuss State of the Union, Web 3.0 Europe. And I prepared a number of questions, but I also would like to encourage you all to provide questions. I think they will appear on this screen, if I'm not mistaken. There used to be a smaller screen, which might come back. But let me just kick things off with a first question, because I mean, in a number of areas, Europe follows this concept of strategic autonomy. Works more, works less in different areas, and also different schools of thoughts in terms of what's globalization and what's autonomy. And when we look at Web 2.0, there is really a dominance of US and China. And then now some people say the next phase, Web 3.0, offers really the opportunity for Europe to become the leader, to really leapfrog back and be the front runner again. So Martin, what's your view? Can Europe lead this Web 3.0 next phase? Can it be this front runner, this leader?
I think it's already leading it. Actually, Chainalysis just recently did a report on the state of crypto. And according to that analysis, already Central, Western, and Northern Europe is the largest crypto economy, actually larger than the US. And I think if you go and also look historically, in fact, one could argue that the second greatest blockchain project, Ethereum, was created somewhere between London and Zug. Zug actually was home to a lot of the early crypto projects, and I think it's only becoming bigger and larger. And we have seen this a few times with other tech sectors where Europe was leading. And I think, GSM/mobile telephony was one example. Actually, even in social networks, we were doing really well. I mean, you won't remember, but 15, 20 years ago. And then the US came in and just rolled over Europe. And I think there are two reasons why that happened. And there's two reasons why actually we have now more than just hope that this time we can actually sustain this competitive edge. I think the first reason was a very fractured and fragmented market. So in the US, if you were a startup, a company, you were immediately accessing 300 million customers, or at least a market of 300 million people. Whereas in Europe, it was basically these 27, 30 plus, depending on who you count in and out, different markets. And it's just much, much more difficult to not build, but to scale a business when it's this fragmented. And when you have different jurisdictions, but different regulations across the different countries. And I think we can discuss it later, but I think this is one great benefit of MiCA, that it's actually really creating a digital single market. I think the second and main reason why Europe has always failed to sustain the leadership had to do with funding. That at some point when you become really big in traditional tech, you needed massive fuel, i.e. money, to burn. You had to burn through hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And it was actually impossible to raise that kind of money in Europe until very recently. So, but I think that's the fundamental change here with crypto. I mean, for once, even the VC industry has really matured in Europe. And if you look at, I think last year, total VC investment was something like 105 billion euros, which is very much, that's basically what was invested by all the VCs in the US a couple of years ago. So that's not a problem. But I think, again, when we go to blockchain crypto, we don't need the centralized VCs anymore. I mean, this is exactly the kind of technology that enables fundraising and constant fundraising and intake of money in a decentralized way from anywhere in the world.
But if I can turn this around, so you're kind of basically saying now the possibility for Europe becoming the leader in the Web 3.0 is because of its regulatory power, and MiCA being sort of faster than in other geographies of the world, that Europe actually got its act together and produced this regulation. Is that what you've been saying?
I wouldn't go as far, so I wouldn't actually claim that regulation drives innovation.
Because that was like...
No, it was more about that, the problem we've had with a lot of these markets is that you had 27 different markets with 27 different regulators or regulations and frameworks. So if you were to build a company that actually needs to fit into these 27 different frameworks, it's very costly, it's difficult, it's complicated. But I think MiCA is actually creating a proper single European market. But I wouldn't say that actually regulation necessarily drive the innovation, but I think it can help it. And I think, going back to MiCA, I actually think this is a very good thing because A, it creates a common framework, but B, I think if you're running a business, nothing is worse than uncertainty. So even if you have certainty of certain things you cannot do, it's better than being in a framework where you're not sure if something is legal or illegal, or more importantly, where you're not sure whether a regulator might come in or a government might come in and stop you from doing it. Because if there's a clear framework, they can't do that, right? Because you can always say, sorry, I am entitled to do this because, look, that's what the law says.
Yeah. So, we've heard a couple of times during the day that MiCA could actually be a source of inspiration for other regulators around the world, that this could be something that is sets a bit the tone for things, and which again relates to Europe's soft power in a way. That's something that we've been hearing a lot, that trying to make this a positive connotation, that Europe is the world's, it's kind of in regulation, we're kind of top of the world, and then turning this into the word soft power. So looking at MiCA, just one more question on that. Do you think, and you've hinted at this, but do you think it gives the industry another push within Europe and also beyond?
I'm not sure about that. Actually, I think what's clear is that it will give some weight to Europe internationally, or at least that I'm sure that just like with GDPR, and to be very clear, GDPR had a lot of drawbacks and is not necessarily an example of a perfect legislation, but it actually drove and inspired a lot of jurisdictions from India to California to build something similar. So I think in the same sense, MiCA, which I think is much more well thought through, and if anything, we've learned a lesson from GDPR, or the regulators have learned a lesson to be much more light touch. So I think this is where indeed this can be kind of an inspiration. I think this is where, it's in a way a source of soft power for Europe, because I think it's a pretty reasonable framework. It's pretty well done. It's pretty light touch, and it excludes some of those things that actually rightly excludes, that we've discussed earlier today, like
Mhm.
DeFi or
So
NFTs.
I'm sure the legislator who's still in the room super happy to hear that. So this was kind of a well done from the EVP of Binance. So that's a good one. There's an interesting statistic for the access to the market. So there is roughly around 90% of adults in Europe have a bank account, kind of a classical bank account. And I suppose the group here and also watching is part of that 90% group. But the ones that have these personal wallets that give the access to the Web 3.0, that's not even 20%. So that's quite of a big disproportionate situation. And if this is the kind of the leader in the world for this, we're looking at enormous potential. Again, positively looking at it to grow this. So what's Binance doing in a way to drive the crypto ecosystem so that those 90% come more like 90.
So I think fundamentally our mission at Binance is really advance crypto and basically bring it to everyone in the world, because we do believe that crypto and blockchain is fundamentally a force for good. So this is really our key objective. I think what we're doing in Europe, there are several things. First of all, we have voted with our feet, right? So we actually came, and Binance used to be historically very, very decentralized. We didn't really have any hubs even. And now we do have a major hub in the EU, in France. I mean, probably a year ago it was less than 10 people there. Now it's probably more like 150. I'm sure we'll be adding a couple hundred people more there. We've grown a major hub in UK and many other countries in Europe. So I think we're building talent, we're building knowledge, bringing knowledge, we're bringing know-how. And I think we're also kind of sending a signal to others that if we think that places like France are good for us to come, that probably means that actually they are pretty crypto friendly. So I think that's also driving a lot of other companies to come to Europe. So that's one thing. Second thing is we're investing huge amount of time, effort, and money into education, crypto education. We think this is really, really super important because in early technologies like this, you really want to make sure that people kind of know what they're doing, what they're getting into, that they're not sort of taken advantage by unscrupulous actors, because that would lead to kind of bad experiences. And regulators would also notice these bad experiences, and inevitably that would lead to backlash. So again, Binance Academy, that's the largest educational or crypto educational website. We're investing quite a lot of money. And finally, we're also building accelerators, working with local communities, local startups, techs, France, Italy, Portugal, and elsewhere. So yeah, we're trying to do all of these things.
Well, education, I think, is a absolutely crucial point, as you mentioned. I mean, at the early days of computers, right? This when they had the black and white screens, and when the screens
we
were
wouldn't
kind
know,
of,
would we, guys?
No. When I'm just kind of a bit of history lesson here, kind of really deep down. Then in schools it was, now you need to learn a computer language, and motivation was close to zero, because if that's so complicated that you need to learn another language in order to access something, that becomes then there is some kind of failure, because what you talk about inclusivity means it's also accessible. It's accessible to people who maybe are usually not part of these ecosystems. Which brings me to a question that, of course, is close to my heart and also close to my activities otherwise when working with women's leadership. Because, I mean, also again, classically, the financial sector is a very male one. Also, a lot of the tech infrastructure, the tech ecosystem is a very male one. What do you do differently at Binance? Because it looks quite different there.
Yeah, actually, interestingly enough, I think something like 40% of all the employees at Binance are women. And actually, if we look at the leadership, I don't know, the top 20, it's probably more like 50-50. So yeah, I don't know what it is. We're certainly we're definitely not discriminatory, and I think we've been very lucky that actually one of our co-founder was a woman. She brought in a lot of other women. I think that inspired other women. So this is something that we really kind of deeply care about. And CZ, the founder and CEO, it's also kind of strongly pushing to make sure that we're not just a male-dominated company. And I think that might sound like a cliche, but I've seen it, I've learned it, we've all learned it so many times. If you have more diversity on a leadership team, including gender diversity, you actually get better decisions.
Well, the data for that is absolutely available, and it's not by kind of organizations that are not suspected to be feminist, like McKinsey and others. They have done those studies which show more diversity in leadership also generates more diversity in the workforce and better results. But in my home country, Germany, even though usually they like facts and figures, that message somehow doesn't yet get through that much. But okay, that's another topic. Back to politics and cryptocurrencies and Web 3.0. So we've heard also again today that there is a political but also consumer appetite for a stable coin that is related to the euro, so a euro stable coin, because currently, as we've heard, the stablecoin market is really dominated by the US dollar. So what's holding us back? What's holding Europe back? What's holding back the rise of the euro stablecoin? Could be a blockbuster movie title, actually. So what is the kind of and how, if it's rising, how far can it go in your view?
I mean, we had a great panel on this topic today, so I'm not sure how much more I can add, but for sure, what was blocking it until now was negative interest rates in Europe, right? So if you wanted to build a euro stablecoin, you actually had to pay to create it and for people to hold it. So that wasn't really a great business model unless you had a really, really long-term vision. So I think that was one of the problems. We did have a couple, and there are still a few euro stablecoins. But I think part of the problem was, I think with the early ones, they didn't really get listed by any of the major exchanges. And so that kind of, then you have a chicken and egg problem, right? You if you're not really listed on a major exchange, that kind of, it creates less liquidity, less demand, and you're just basically stuck in this vicious circle. So now I think what's changing is that well, we have positive interest rates, and sadly they were only going to go up for a while, I think. I think we have also now a clear regulatory framework, and there is even, I would say, a clear demand from all parts of the spectrum. I think both from, I would say, retail, kind of more institutional / trader, and even there's a political demand, as we've heard today, for a euro stablecoin. So even at Binance, we're now actually really seriously looking into what can Binance do to advance a major stablecoin that would be euro denominated or euro backed, and it could be a serious, I don't want to say competitor, but maybe a serious player in this space next to all these or some of these major US dollar denominated stablecoins.
And can you, I mean, we're here between us, we're a really friendly crowd, and we all love each other. Could you just kind of share like 1, 2 kind of considerations? What's in the decision-making process in Binance to say, yes, we go for it?
I don't think this is such a small crowd. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I just thought just give
It's
it
a good try,
try.
though. Yeah,
Just give it a try, yeah, because Okay, well, then we just kind of watch this space about the euro stablecoin and see what's happening in the next few weeks, month, which in crypto environment is actually a long time, right? So who knows what's going to happen? Tomorrow, however, on the program, there is a speech, a conversation with the European Parliament Vice President Eva Kaili, and she will speak about NFTs. So NFTs are, that's where really innovation is happening. It's kind of one of the most fascinating part of this whole thing,
Yeah.
and it's also really evident that like a lot of creativity leading to innovation goes in there. So from now, your point of view as somebody who's been in politics, who's dealt with people who maybe are not so fascinated by creative innovation, what's the promise that NFTs hold? How can we have this promise spark over to people who've not yet been captured? And how can it be connected to this metaverse?
It's
Huge
my
buzzwords attack.
It's my favorite topic, but I'm afraid I'm going to give you a very boring economist answer. So, as an economist by training, I'm super fascinated by NFTs. I think this is kind of the most exciting part of the technology. And if you ask why, so I would actually compare it to the beginnings of the internet. So when internet, started kind of in the early 90s, economists were getting super excited because they were all saying, "Oh my God, this is going to change everything, the entire economy." And when you ask them why, show me, like, there's nothing real here yet, tangible. The answer was, well, because it's one of the fundamental tenets of economics that if you kind of improve the exchange of information in the economy better, the economy will function much better and new businesses will come up. It sounded horribly abstract, but actually, and people were, the economists wouldn't be able to tell you anything concrete, like what this is really going to mean. But voila, 30 years later, like, we've seen what internet has done for us. The reason why I'm actually really excited about NFTs is because we live in a digital age. And one of the big problems, I think, in the digital age has been that the fundamental block of digital economy, a digital file, you could not really properly assign property rights to it. And sorry, this is now where I'm sounding like a horribly boring economist. But again, one of the fundamental tenets of economics is that economies function well if you can assign property rights clearly. And then, in some of these, like conflict zones in Africa, Latin America, where economies are falling apart, are a great example of that because, property rights are not guarantees. So now this is still horribly kind of generic, but the reason why I'm excited is because I think with the NFT, you can, for the first time, clearly assign property right to any kind of digital file. So I think it's a fundamental innovation. It's a fundamental technology. We have not even started to comprehend what this means, let alone have a clear understanding where we can go with this technology. But already, I think if you look around, like, this is no longer just, pictures. People are experimenting from, R&D funding, from digital identities you can put into NFTs. Speaking of property rights, actually, you can create real estate property rights. So I think this is a really, really exciting technology, and we're literally in the first month of this newborn baby still.
Just thinking about Europe as sometimes being dubbed the old economy, right? And now there is this vision that you have of basically a tokenized economy. How can we make this transition, and how can we make sure that that people are looking forward to it?
I mean, I think the best way to do it is just, people in this room, it's the entrepreneurs. Like, I don't think we cannot expect the large old conglomerates of yesterday to be the drivers of this, or any of the large companies. I think all of this innovation and this drive forward will be coming from startups. I mean, and even if you look at the US, like, the fundamental new applications and technologies of internet, they were not brought in by the IBMs or even Microsoft of this world initially, right? They were all new companies created by entrepreneurs. So I think this is, again, this is why this is such an exciting moment for Europe, I think, is because not only we have the right kind of skill set, the right talent, I think even the entrepreneurial culture that we didn't quite have here 15, 20 years ago. But I think we have now also solved overcome the main issue, which has been funding. So I think the future is very, very bright ahead of Europe.
I would almost be tempted to conclude our chat here, but we still have 2 minutes. So let me just ask you one last question before then thanking you for all the wisdom that you shared. Because, there's this other big buzzword around, where I think probably there's also a 90%, 20% difference about people living in the real world and people being present in the metaverse. So how does, like talking about Europe and the populations in Europe, so how does this ideas of this tokenized economy and NFTs, how does it connect to the metaverse and how does it connect to us here?
I'm looking at the time and we have like
1:47.
1:47, so I'm not sure we have
I always
really much time. And actually,
about that.
I'm the last thing standing between you and the drinks tonight. And actually, I think we're probably gonna. This is a great, actually, in fact, topic for a conversation over drinks. Well, not even the next one, but for a conversation over the drinks. So, yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay, so we leave it at that, so that everybody has not only some drinks to take, but also some food for thought to take along. Thank you very much, Martin, for all these insights and all the information you shared.
Thank you, Silvana.
Thanks everybody here for listening and being part of this.
Thank you.